Hey filmmakers, it is Kerry with Filmmaker Central. We've got a new toy in the studio today. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Okay, so what we're going to look at is a new gimbal from FeiyuTech. And now, I'm going to say I have a love-hate relationship with gimbals. And this goes back a long time. I've had all the DJI products, I've had Moza products, and honestly, I've never been like completely happy with a gimbal. And sometimes it's because they'll only take my heavier cameras. They won't take something like the Sony ZV-1, which is kind of my go-to camera in a lot of cases when I don't really want to haul the A7 III around. And so a lot of them, it's just too light of a camera. And so that's a problem. And then other ones where they actually will work with it, they're heavy and bulky and just awkward, or the batteries drain just sitting in them, or you know, it's just, I can go on and on and on. Now the best gimbals that I've used, and no doubt, have been the DJI gimbals, and the new RS2 and the RSC2. They're awesome. And the RSC2 will work with the ZV-1, but it's an expensive setup. It's kind of bulky. It's heavier, and so I never bought it. I had it because I had the DJI store, but I just never was just like, wow, I got to have this thing. But recently, FeiyuTech asked if I would review this new one, and I'm like, sure. And they gave me a choice. Do you want, this is this new Scorp. Do you want the Scorp or do you want the Scorp Pro? I looked at the specs, and the Scorp Pro, pretty awesome. I mean, spec-wise, what I've seen of it, pretty cool machine, but it wouldn't handle the ZV-1. The Scorp, which is what I got, will handle the ZV-1 as well as my A7 III. Win-win. So I went with the lower end model. Now, full disclaimer, FeiyuTech did send this to me for review purposes. They have no input on this video. This will go live before they have a chance to review it. So this is completely unbiased. This is my first review for FeiyuTech, and I'm going to be brutally honest, and we'll see how that turns out. It comes in this nice little case, and there's nothing wrong with this. I mean, it seems padded well enough. Everything fits in here very nicely. You got the gimbal cables. Now this section up here actually has Velcro, and I have the extra pieces. There's tons of different adapter cables to fit a wide variety of cameras. There's an extra screw thumb wheel. There's a lens support in here. And since I'm not using those, I'm just going to keep them underneath here. There's also a picture of how this all goes back together in here, which is super, super handy. So this is what we have in the package. And now in the box, you're also going to get a quick start guide. And in the quick start guide is where you will find links to the manual and the app for this. So it does have a 1/4-20 on the bottom, and it comes with one of these basic little tripods. Now, here it is called Scorp, and the icon for it is actually a scorpion. So there's some videos I've seen where they call it the Scorpion, and then others where they call it the Scorp, but I guess you can kind of see from the shape that it's kind of this scorpion-inspired handle. Okay, so what do we have? We have a fairly interesting designed gimbal. You have kind of a, I don't know, a slanted hand grip down here with your trigger control. You have another hand grip back here, and this is where you have your touch screen, your joystick, mode control, and your shutter control. And then on either side of this, there's F1 and F2. Over here, we have our power switch. We have A and B buttons. This is kind of cool. We'll be talking about that. Our locks for all the different, I mean, this is solidly locked over here. On the other side, we have our toggle switch, which controls the magic wheel. So this can be pan, tilt, roll, focus, zoom, depending on your camera, you know, so it can have different functions that you can toggle between on the wheel. Then you have FPV, so it's a dedicated FPV button. I don't know why. FPV is not one of the modes I would toggle between, so I'd rather this be quickly changeable. Now, this mode for the magic wheel I can control pretty easily, but this FPV, that one is in a weird spot. So I wish they were like stacked or something over here, so I'm just not, I don't know about that one. But we'll see how things work out. All right, so we've got it on here. Now it comes with two different quick release plates. These do seem like they are Arca Swiss design, and there's a long one and a short one. And now to get the balance right on here, I actually double stacked them, and they're actually designed for that. So that made things pretty handy. Now I'm going to go ahead and unlock the side here, and I'll lock it back up, unlock. There we go. So this will just, you don't have to unlock things like that, but I find just to get things on here, it does make life a little easier. Now we could go through the whole balancing process, but I've already used this once. And this is where it's kind of interesting. So instead of having a case that could support the gimbal in whatever positions you left it in, what they did instead is they made it very easy for you to get back to the last positions you used. Now if you see right here, there's this little red dot. Now you can adjust that. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to loosen up that, and I'm going to raise this until that red dot is in the middle of the circle here. And that tells me I'm back to where I had it before. Okay, pretty simple. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to loosen that. Tying it down. We have the same thing up here. Okay, let me put the camera on. Now this is the one where I do kind of need to get it balanced right, and this camera is a little wonky because when it powers off, the lens closes. So I'm going to open it up and have my monitor turn back to face me. So I'll just undo that, and I'll just adjust this. Just a smidge more right there. Okay, so I've got that balance done. I'm going to go ahead. Okay, not quite perfect. So maybe I had moved that red dot there, so I'm just going to get my balance back in place, lock it down, and we're ready to turn it on. Okay, when it turns on, display comes up, and we're pretty much good to go. Now, because I move it and I adjusted it and things might not be perfect, I'm going to go to motor power, select auto tune, start tuning, It's going to vibrate for a moment. Calibration complete. And I am ready to go. Okay, so initial thoughts. First off, it's light. Yeah, I mean, it's really light. I like that. The DJI, the battery is a lot bigger, so it is heavier, and the handle comes down a little further. So, you know, you got to make those trade-offs. You want 12 hours of battery life, you got to have a bigger, heavier battery. Now, they say that this thing can do like 10 hours. I don't know if it's going to get 10 hours. If it gets 5 or 6 hours, I think I'm going to be super happy because I never shoot for that long. That would be an entire day of shooting for me. And I never shoot with just one camera, so I can't imagine this not lasting me an entire day. So there's that. You can take, you know, the tripod off if you want. Makes it a little bit more compact. Now, I find it more natural to actually hold it like the trigger, and so because my hand is big, I like that tripod extension on there. Now, you also can hold it from the back, which makes it a little front heavy for me, but if you're two-handing it, man, this thing is super, super easy to move around. And you have your shutter button up here. Now, I wish they had another shutter button somewhere that I could access if I was only holding it from here. So if they're listening and they're taking any advice, please add another shutter button. That would just be stupidly convenient. Maybe above the AB buttons over here, that would be super cool. I'd be very happy with that. But the design does allow you to do low slung stuff very, very easily. That I really, really dig. Now, the problem here, I'm just going to call it a problem. It's not a big problem, but you have your trigger all the way down here. And, you know, when you're moving around and you want to recenter everything, you double tap to just kind of recenter everything, but it's all the way down there. So if I'm way down on the ground and I'm doing it, I have to reach down with my other hand to do that, or try and navigate the menu when it's in this awkward position. So again, another trigger up on top, being able to use the F1 or F2 keys, something easy where I could have another, I think another trigger up on top would be ideal. Now, these aren't really knocks on the device. These are improvements that I would like to see, because as it is, it works extremely well. And I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the results. It's extremely stable, even with a super lightweight camera on here. That's pretty unheard of. It has a bunch of cool features on it, and it just works. That being said, well, let's go over the pros, all right? Because this is a good gimbal, and like I said, I'm very, very happy with it. You have multiple follow speeds, fast, medium, slow. You have scenarios that you can use, and you can do this from the app or right from the touchscreen. I got time lapse. If I go into that, I have motion lapse, static time lapse, or hyperlapse. I haven't tested these all yet. You have your auto rotation, and that's your inception roll. So if I'm holding it down, I go into auto rotation, boom, give me a circle, you know, and yeah, does pretty good. And then as soon as I go out of that mode, it goes back to normal. So, okay, it's not, you know, or a Dutch roll if you want to call it that, not something I'm going to use all the time. Panorama, portrait mode, selfie mode, and track video. All right, since I'm going through these, track video doesn't work. And it doesn't work from the app, it doesn't work from the screen, as far as I can tell. And what that should allow you to do is I believe on the Ronin app, it's called waypoints. I can have a start point, go over here, set the time to go between them, and then basically do an automatic shot. It just doesn't work. I mean, I can set those points, but as soon as I tell it to execute, it just either goes limp, it starts vibrating, or I've had it spin violently around, and there's no way of putting the time between those spots. So I think track video today is broken. And like I said, it's the same whether I'm doing it on here or in the app. Everything else seems to work. So that's the only one. Motion time lapse, really, really cool. You can do some really trick stuff with that. Let's see. Now our different modes, we have PTF, lock, FPV, FFW, and PF. So normally I'm going to be in pan follow, the PF mode. So if I'm turning, rotating my wrist or moving, it's going to follow in that direction. But if I tilt, the camera stays straight. So this is how I normally shoot. If I go to pan, tilt, follow, now I have the same thing on the rotation, but when I tilt it, now the camera is going to tilt with it. So good for getting a shot of something on a table or something, you know, a product shot, or coming down, or getting that macro type shot. You know, I want detail, I'm going to come down and the camera is going to rotate with it. So very handy. Lock, now lock is just going to lock everything. So no matter how I move, it's going to lock those axes. FPV, like I said, when talking about the FPV button on the side, it's not something I'm going to use. So it's going to follow however I move, including the roll. You know, I don't know. It's because it's so easy to get to on here, it's probably something I'm going to try. When it's buried in menus or weird, on the Moza, there were so many weird button presses, hold down, double tap, all, because there was only two controls. Having a screen and being able to easily get through stuff is super, super, super cool. So makes life a lot easier. And it's, like I said, it's probably going to make me try some of these things in different scenarios. So that I really like. We can go in and control what the magic wheel does. Right now it's on roll. I can put it on tilt. I can put it on pan. Now with the Sony ZV-1, I haven't figured out a way to do it on focus. If I turn on electronic follow focus and I use the wheel, what it normally does is zoom. And it's not a good zoom. It's really, really wonky. So not a huge fan of how that works, but that's the ZV-1 problem. If I put my A7 III on here with like the 18-105 lens that has all the electronic controls, it's going to work perfectly. But with this camera, oh, I don't have the cable plugged in. That's why it's not working. I have the Sony cable here. This is the USB-C to multi. So it looks like a micro USB but longer, and that plugs into the camera, and that plugs in just underneath here. Now there's another port on here for wireless transmission, wireless video transmission. I'm not quite sure how all that works yet. It's another component that's going to be available soon. So I think your camera output is going to plug into here, and then there's somewhere else on here, I guess, that you can plug in this wireless transmitter. Haven't seen it, don't know anything about it, but it's something that is supposed to be coming down the road. And they have a couple of other accessories, but really, I think out of the box for somebody, because it has all the different cables that you're going to need, this is a great package. I know there's also an optional follow focus motor. So for lenses that don't have electronic focus. You could add a focus motor. And then there's the Scorp Pro, which adds even more features. But enough of this. We need to get it out, put it to some real world testing, see how well it works. So let's get out in the field, and then we'll come back and see what we really think of this thing. Well, I've been out in the field and I've been playing with the Scorp for about 2 weeks now. And I gotta say, I kind of like it. Is it perfect? No, it's not. And we'll go over some of the things that it's good at and some of the things that it's not so good at. But what I do like is how fast I can get things up and running. And I'm just, while we're sitting here talking, I'm going to set up my Sony ZV-1. This has been kind of my primary camera I've been using for this purpose because it's a very lightweight camera and it has a very specific use case for me when it comes to what I wanted to do and what I've needed to do over the last couple weeks. Now, some of you know I have another YouTube channel. It's called Trail Traveler. It is all about like off-roading and jeeping type stuff. And we do a lot of trail guides. And for that, we need good quality footage. And good quality footage is not always easy to come by. And I think things are going to be set up pretty nice on here. Now, the Scorp, well, let's back up to the ZV-1. The ZV-1 was actually purchased as kind of a vlogging camera for Trail Traveler. And it never really got much in the way of usage because the stabilization just isn't as good as I needed it to be. It just really suffers in a few areas. And it's unfortunate because I really do like the camera, but it's just not quite there. It's close, but it's just not quite there. And that's kind of a bummer for me. And so trying to find a gimbal for it has proven to be basically non-existent. And the closest was the DJI Ronin-rsc 2. It actually worked okay on there. But the RS2 is just too big. The Moza Air 2 was okay, but I really didn't like the battery setup on it. So there's always been something that has been a gripe. And the Scorp here, it's been great, actually. It's been really good. Now, notice this configuration. I've got the ZV-1 on here with the screen folded out and around and usually tilted up so I can see it. This creates a weird balance issue. And although right now, I mean, it's turned off and everything is balanced pretty darn good. So it doesn't take long, and you have the little red dots in here that help you get everything set back up the same way every time. Now, I may not have had the screen open. I could have had it closed the last time, and so my balances were just a hair off, but it takes almost no time to get it back up and balanced. So for that, great. Being able to use it with a lightweight camera like this, fantastic. Being able to throw my Sony A7 III on here, it's awesome. Fantastic. So what does it do good? Well, what does it do good is pretty much everything. I really haven't had any major issues. There's going to be one thing it does not do well at all. It doesn't do something like that. But the rest of it has been great. The stabilization's been great. The setup is great. The control is really good. I'm using the included USB-C to multi cable into the ZV-1 which starts and stops recording properly. I can take pictures. What it doesn't do, and not an issue with the Scorp, it's an issue with the camera, is I can't do the magic wheel to focus. I've tried all kinds of settings, nothing seems to work, but it does, I can control the zoom, which is fairly pointless because it basically goes all or nothing. There's really no control, no smooth control over it. Where I have found the magic wheel to be useful is doing pan or tilt shots. And for that, it's really cool. I can do really nice, smooth product shots, things like that. Or if I'm trying to control the gimbal with a pitch and I want to control the angle, really, really good for that. So for that, I like it. The other features, the pan tilt zoom or pan tilt roll control, the FPV control, all the different settings that you would like have worked great. The time-lapse feature took a couple tries to get a good time-lapse, and that is a very difficult thing to do when you're doing a moving time-lapse. It's just, you know, it's a lot of work for a gimbal to be that perfect. So basically out of camera and just processed as a time-lapse, you see a few little hiccups here and there. Nothing major, and then I just added very basic stabilization in DaVinci Resolve, and I got this. So with minimal effort, I turned that into a beautiful motion time-lapse. So that I'm very happy with. All that has worked great. What does not work, in my opinion, what does not work at all is video track. To me, this is a broken feature. I even reached out to tech support to ask them if I'm doing something wrong, and they're like, no, that is exactly how it works. So let me start with my expectation. My expectation of video track is to be able to set up a shot that starts in one position, goes to another position based on some time, right? Can hold that position for however long I want, then go to another position and do that and continue and kind of create what I would call waypoints. You know, this is going to be your pan, tilt, and roll, and, you know, depending on your camera, maybe even focus, right? Or zoom. Being able to control the camera, definitely a big step up, but just controlling the gimbal to be able to do a pan, tilt, and roll position, pan, tilt, roll position based on time, right? Because that's what I'm used to. If I can open up the Ronin app and I have waypoint settings that I created for trade shows years ago that still work. I can connect to a Ronin, hit go, boom, good. You know, so, and it will work. On here, you can set a number of points. So you can have your 1 point, next point, next point, next point, next point, hit go, and it just goes between them at some incredibly slow speed. You can't control the speed. You can't control how long it stops at each spot. You just have some speed that you don't know what it is, that it runs through those waypoints. I can't imagine any scenario where that would work because you don't know what the camera is going to do. You don't know where it's going to be pointing at any given time. Now, a time lapse, you're expecting things to be happening in the frame. You know, people are moving, or the clouds are moving, or the sun is moving. Something is the subject of interest, and we're just kind of going to be following a track from A to B based on how many frames we're taking. It's going to go from here through here over the course of that shot. And I know when I set it up, if it's 20 minutes, it's going to take 20 minutes to go from the first one to the last one and do whatever else is in between. With the video, You literally have no idea what it's going to do. So to me, that feels like an unfinished feature, or a feature that if this is the way they're going to leave it, it's not something anybody can use practically, because you simply don't know what it's going to do. Other than that, this is fantastic. There's no perfect product. And I'll say that too, right? There's nothing that's perfect out there. So whether, it's the highest end product or whatever, you can always find something to gripe about. And sometimes it just gets super, super nitpicky. I kind of like the FPV button up here to be able to just go into a different tracking mode. I wish that was settable, so I could switch between the normal pan tilt lock to follow me or something. I want that to be programmable, but it's really, I just can't do it. It actually hurts to move my hand back this far, and I'm taking my grip off the camera, or off the grip. I can't get up there and maintain a solid grip on here. That button would have to be in this area here. So that makes this button fairly useless for me. Going to the other side, the power button being basically in the same place as the FPV means I'm never going to hit it accidentally. That's good. The AB, now these are actually, whoa, I don't have it turned on. These are actually pretty cool because I can set one position, hold down, go to another position, hit the other one, and then I can toggle between them. They're a little hard to push, so it's kind of a hard thing to do if you're holding it, but if I have it on the table or something and I can really work that to get kind of a programmed shot, it's going to turn out really, really cool. So I dig that. Now, something else I'll point out here is sometimes when I want to do a product shot, even having it on this tripod is too high, and I really want to get this thing down low. So it actually has these built-in legs on it, oddly enough, and now I have a much lower position that I can work with. So that is kind of cool. I like that. So that gives me some extra flexibility. The controls. Let's talk about the controls for a moment. Fold those back up out of the way. Now, most of the time, and I have really big hands, so for me it's very handy just to keep the tripod in here. It just secures my grip a little bit more. And if I want to, I can come and grab it with the second hand. But if I'm trying to use it one-handed, I have no start, stop, record. It's all the way back here. So I'm either having to reach up with my other hand, or I have to start back here, which is not really the most comfortable position. There really needs to be a way of starting and stopping when you're in this position, which seems to be, for me, the most comfortable. Now, what I do like is the design. And our main purpose was out on the trails, running around, trying to film other people, and really being able to I'm going to turn it on here. You're getting all weirded on me. I just want you to hold still. So being able to have two hands on this, it feels like you're almost holding nothing, especially with a small camera on here like this. Makes it real easy to get super low shots right on the ground, bringing it up, doing some really nice, cool shots. Very, very happy with how this works. All right, go through the scenarios. Time lapse, I already mentioned, works really well. Auto rotation, that's going to point the camera straight out. Let me just hit something. We're going to do a rotate. Okay, kind of cool. Had a little micro vibration there. Kind of to be expected a little bit with my setup. Having this monitor way off on the side, it doesn't like doing that full rotation, and I'll get a little micro vibration. If I turn the screen in and make sure I'm balanced and everything, I don't have the same problem. Panorama shots worked really well. Portrait mode, not something I'll ever use. Selfie mode, I actually turned that off so I don't accidentally hit it. The track video, absolutely worthless. So that's the different modes that it has in it. Being able to do the settings, auto tune, setting the accesses is great. The follow speed, you have slow, medium, fast, which works really well as custom, where you can customize the follow speed or the dead zone. And with the controls here, we're in FPV mode. I can change it to PTF mode. So it's going to tilt with things. Sometimes that's one. Now I find I hit these side buttons all the time. I got big old fingers, so I'm constantly locking it when I don't mean to. Pan follow, but no tilt follow. Pan tilt follow. It's going to follow everything. Lock. It's going to lock everything into position. So number of different modes that all work extremely well. But with my big hands up here on the grip, I'm constantly hitting the F2 over here. F1 I really haven't found a lot of good uses for. Again, I wish some of this was more easily programmed, but you know, this is a first gen of this model line and the firmware. Okay, it just started a micro vibration there. It's fairly rare that that happens. And if it does, I just go to motor power, hit auto tune, start tuning, let it kind of do its thing. And I usually do that before I start shooting anyway. And I have ended up with extremely good results. So what is this going to set you back? For the standard Scorp model that I have here, it's $429. I think it's well worth it. It's a really nice unit. Being able to have tiny cameras as well as larger cameras. The stabilization on it is great. The feature set is really great, with the exception of the video track, which I hope that's something that they address in future versions. But for now, it is what it is. The way it folds up and locks into position is really nice. And if you saw when I was actually putting it together, I just have this padded neoprene laptop bag, actually, that I keep it in. It just makes it real easy for me to pull it all out, all set up. I don't have to rebalance it, and I'm good to go. So I can be ready to shoot in very, very little time. Even having the camera on it in here is really useful. So I think I'm a big fan. It's definitely going to be a go-to tool of mine. We've taken it out on the last couple trips. We've used it pretty heavily. I see no reason why this is not going to be a regular part of our toolkit. I just like the way it works. I've always wanted something that I could put the smaller camera on for when we're out on the trails, and this worked great. I was able to get really good footage with it, and you know, it's better than a GoPro on here. So that's what I really liked. I wanted a step up in terms of camera, but the stabilization that Sony implied it had just isn't there. So it needs something like the Scorp. And this combination, for me, is absolutely killer. Because not only can I use it, I can hand it to someone else, and they can use it very easily without really doing anything. And my girlfriend, she can use it, no problems. So there's other tools that we have, like the DJI Pocket 2. The screen on it is so small, you can't just hand that to someone and expect them to get decent shots, because they just can't see what they're shooting with. Here, with a nice big screen, you can. Now, what's missing from the Scorp that you know, I wish I had, and maybe I could have gone if I went with the Scorp Pro. There's no place to mount a monitor. And I'd really like a high nit external monitor on here. That would make a huge difference when we're out filming outside during the day. Really, aside from that, I'm very happy with it. And we are going to use this thing like crazy. So it's the Scorp from FeiyuTech. Check it out, $429. This is a high recommendation from me. I think anyone who gets this is going to be extremely happy with it. So thanks for watching this review. Hope you liked it. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.